Welcome to Inside the 18. I'm Michael Magid, live from Hollywood, California. With me is 99 World Cup winner Saskia Weber, who I've been getting it down, haven't I? The pronunciation.
Yeah, you got it good.
I'm getting it
My
solid
mom
now.
would be proud. And by the way, happy birthday, Mom.
Today's your mom's birthday?
Yes, it is.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yes.
Well, happy birthday to her. That is fantastic.
Wilhelmina.
Wilhelmina.
Yes.
Happy birthday to Wilhelmina. And man, Saskia and Wilhelmina. That's fantastic. I love those two names. Speaking of names that I love, we're going to get right to our guest today. Guys, this guy does not need any introductions. Dan, you may be one of the most sought after guests on this show. People reach out all the time asking when you're going to come back. You know him. You love him. World-renowned sports psychologist Dan Abrahams is back on Inside the 18. What's up, man?
Oh, I'm just thinking about how much I need to charge you, therefore, to bring me back on the show.
I feel like that was like an Oprah introduction of like Dr. Phil. Back when she first got him started.
I'm kind of thinking, here's an opening here. I need to double my fee from $5,000 to $10,000 an hour, basically. I mean,
I should have gone to grad school for psychology.
What is that in euros?
More.
€4, about £4. But I'm just, to be honest, you've confused me immensely because I'm now confused as to what's difficult about Saskia Weber's name, basically.
Because everybody in America says Saskia. And it's
Okay.
Saskia. Like you said it right. But, you know, and then when we had Franz Hook on, he made sure Mike knew it was Saskia. So everybody here calls me Sask. And only my family and my brother and stuff call me Susk. And so now Mike is very proud that he's pronouncing it correctly.
I would, because I was when Michael said it to begin with. I think he said Saskia, and I was going to ask, "Are you Saskia or Saskia or Saskia?" Or
no, it's Saskia.
I thought so. So there you go.
Well,
Mike.
if I'm in Jersey, it's Saskia. You know, it depends on where I am.
Well, speaking of that, Dan, how many times do you get Dan Abrams? I bet that's all the time, right?
On the continent of Europe, it's Dan Abrahams. In fact, if I try to check in at a hotel in Spain or Italy and I say name's Daniel Abrahams, they're like, Abrahams? Abrahams. So that it's Abrahams, it's Abrams. The one
I know Dan Abrams, by the way.
Oh, there is an ABR.
There's Dan Abrams.
Yes.
He's a political commentator and lawyer.
He is. He's a good-looking guy. My wife always says he must get really annoyed because when people type in looking for him, they come up with me. And
I used to hang out with him in New York. I know him. He'd be.
Okay.
He doesn't have the COVID. The beard.
The COVID look. That's very kind of you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm sporting the COVID look. Hey, this is just one day's growth. You know, it's part of being very manly. But it's good to be back on.
Well, Dan. But before we move back on and discuss Saskia's socialite A-list scene that she's got going on, she'll do that. She'll literally just drop names out of nowhere, and I'm like, wait, you're friends with that? What? She's like, oh yeah, he's a good person. He just lives like right next door. That's right next door to my friend's house. Blah blah blah. And I'm like, wait. And then I like look up that person. I'm like, oh my gosh, geez, like Saskia knows everybody in the world. I guess that's what happens when you win World Cups. Dan,
Manhattan.
Yeah, I guess there's that too. Dan, for some of our newer audience who might not be familiar with you and your work, can you kind of sum up kind of like, what you do in the sports psych world, a little bit about, the Sports Psych podcast, your books, your seminars, all of that?
How dare they? But I'll do that for them. Yeah, I'm joking. I have been a sports psychologist now for 15 years, predominantly worked in the world of soccer. I'm actually a former pro golfer, not a soccer player. It's probably why I'm a psychologist now, to work out where it went wrong with the golf. And as I say, I've worked heavily over here, this side of the Atlantic, in soccer, from Premier League, right away down to non-leagues and kids, and work with players, parents, and coaches. And I suppose on that journey, I've been blessed to work with some of the best players in the world, both women and men. I've written 4 books, 3 of which have been soccer related: Soccer Tough, Soccer Tough 2, and Soccer Brain, which I'm proud to say were best-selling in the States as well as over here in the UK and globally. And then what else can I big myself up about? I suppose one last thing is that I have a podcast, which is half as good as this podcast, but it's still half decent, and it's called The Sports Psych Show. And it's half decent because I have great guests, not because I'm a particularly good host, but because I have far more intelligent guests than I am, who raise my IQ by about 10 points. So I reach about 90 with the IQ score then. And so that's me. And I enjoy talking about the position of goalkeeper, I suppose, as a psychologist. I think it's a fascinating world.
I mean, it really, really is. And I mean, we've discussed this, over and over again on this show, how much of just the position of goalkeeping and being a goalkeeper coach is so much more mental. Not saying that being a field player is not, there's not a mental aspect as that as well too. But I mean, we even just see just right now with what's going on with David degea and kepa, in the world of football, just in regards to what you have to deal with from not only, your peers, but also the media and the public and everything, and how much it can just affect just how you present yourself. And that's one of the things we really want to talk with you about today, because this kind of came about is that, there are managers out there or coaches out there, and they always describe them as saying they have a presence about them. Honestly, I don't really know what presence is. Like, there's no real specific definition in my mind. So I was like, who better to have on than yourself to kind of break that down? So in your words, what is presence?
I'm glad you think I can give you an answer. What is presence? Look, I suppose in simple terms, it's to impress upon or to impact. So to impress upon somebody else, to impact somebody else's mindset, somebody else's attitude. So I think it's an important quality to have as a player. I don't think every player needs it, and I think there's different types of presences, if we can pluralize it. I suppose straight away, as soon as we started, I'm going to speak out of turn as a psychologist. So I really shouldn't speak about specific players, but if I think this is an outfield player, obviously, but if I think of a Lionel Messi, I'm going to take an educated guess that he wouldn't necessarily get the party started from a presence perspective, but just his very presence is going to impact. So I would imagine that would be a fair thing to say. So I think it's to impress upon, to impact, to make a difference to somebody else in terms of how they feel. I think feelings come into this. And I think that not every player has to have it in abundance. And I think there are intricacies to it. I think there are individual differences. There are different ways in which you can make your presence felt, essentially.
Yeah. By the way, I love the fact when you started, wouldn't get the party started. Saskia and I both had this image of like Messi at a party. It's just like, exactly. I'm sorry, I couldn't.
That's where my mind went.
I couldn't stop laughing. Well, I want to take it just like Saskia, just in yourself in regards to, I'll be straight up honest. I think you have a presence about you. I think that when you walk into a room, I think, a lot of it, I think, has to do with, your accolades as well, too. People are familiar with you and your accomplishments and stuff. But when you walk in a room, you kind of let people know that you're there. And I think that's one of the reasons why you're good at public speaking and all those sorts of things, I mean, do you think it's just something that just kind of is natural with you, or something that you actually worked on to present yourself in a certain light?
Well, I have a hearing problem, so usually when I walk in the room, I'm just loud. At least my mom always told me I had a hearing problem because I speak so loud. No, I know that. Like, I know that it's part of who I am as a person. I know I have a big presence in the sense of personality and kind of like that energy that I bring to things. Like I can have fun anywhere. I'm like, I'm not like saying I'm the life of the party or anything. But
Lionel Messi. I mean,
but you'll know you definitely know when I walk in. I think as far as a goalkeeper goes, it's something that I'm very proud of. I want, if you're coming down on a breakaway or something, you're going to see me and not the goal. You're going to feel me and not the goal. If you're getting ready to take a corner kick or sending a cross, everybody knows they've got to, avoid getting the ball near me. They see me. And that's something that's incredibly important, in my opinion, in goalkeeping. If your presence is in those situations is small, is kind of non-existent, then you're not impacting the person coming against you. That person sees the goal or sees other players. They don't say, oh shit, there's Saskia and she's formidable and I have to beat it. Like, you put that question in somebody's head, that changes the way they play, that changes the way they see the goal, it changes what they do. And so, it's something Tony was very adamant about. And I think if you look at the goalkeepers that were on, look at Bry and stuff. I mean, just a formidable presence. Like, you knew she was there. When you watch the penalty shootout, it's actually a good example. When you actually watch the 9-9 final and the penalty shootout, look at the difference between Gao and look at the difference between Bry. Gao was non-existent, and Gao's a friend of mine, and she's a great goalkeeper in history. She's the greatest Chinese goalkeeper, but Gao's presence was non-existent. You could tell in her body language, you could tell in everything. She was off. She wasn't. But Bry, you knew Bry was going to save it. You knew every single Chinese girl that stood up there to take a shot and saw Bry, and knew that they either had to bury it to beat her or something. And I think that's a good example of like how a goalkeeper can impact a forward or any player coming at them.
Yeah, I want to bring that up with Dan right here, because Allison is not a loud, outspoken, big personality. But I'll be straight up honest. It feels like literally every single time a play is developing and going towards Allison, I know Allison is there, and I know, and he's got just this quiet confidence about him. I mean, and is that an example of having a presence without being vocal, Dan?
Yeah, but there's a difference. Like, Bry off the field was quiet. I'm the same off the field. So, but that it's different. There's player, person, in a sense, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that. I mean, just from what Saskia said there's three words I wrote down, but there's two other I's, because I talked about impress and impact. I would also write down impose.
Yeah.
To impose yourself on yourself, and to impose yourself on the game. And then the other I would be influence. Hey, we're writing a book here, the 4 I's of presence in goalkeeping, right? So we've got impress, impact, impose, influence. I impose myself to influence. I positively influence my teammates. I negatively influence the opposition. And the other word I wrote down is embodiment, embodying who you want to be on the pitch. And hey, Michael, I don't want us to bring us back to game face, because we talk about that every time that we speak. But
game face is awesome, though. I mean, maybe some people don't know about it, so just bring it back.
Yeah, no, I mean, wow. I mean, look, just before we do, I just want to say this, because I love what Saskia was saying, and it's embodying who you want to be. I'm thinking leadership as well. I mean, there's this interesting juxtaposition between presence and leadership. In terms of leadership, in very simple terms, we can lead in 3 ways. We can lead by energy, we can lead by actions, we can lead by instruction. And we're on a goalkeeping podcast. I think all 3 are imperative from the back, aren't they? At set pieces, commanding and demanding your penalty area, being a presence, as I say, at the back, energy, actions, and instruction. But that requires embodying a leader, embodying being a presence. And I agree with Saskia in terms of who you are as a person doesn't necessarily represent who you need to be as a player. You can be quite introverted, if you like, as a person. You can even be shy, which isn't actually introversion, it's neuroticism. But you can be quite shy off the pitch, but on the pitch you're going to have to embody who you need to be to get the job done. And so that's where a game face can be useful, because a game face borrows from your best game, it borrows from your dream game, it borrows from who you want to be. So we always come back to, if you remember, Michael, when we first sat down, we talked about the player I work with, who's actually a Premier League goalkeeper now. He used to be a Championship goalkeeper, and his game face is brave, confident Neuer. Brave, confident Neuer. And he's going out there and he expresses himself in a confident manner. He adjusts his body language. He creates a presence by embodying that confidence, that bravery, that Neuer-esque character. For him, in his world, Neuer is somebody who is like that, is brave and confident. So I think it's interesting. When you put your boots on, or you put your cleats on, you have to have the skills. I think we're very quick in sport to talk about choices and decisions. I'm quicker to talk about being mentally skillful enough to flex into the kind of persona, game face, that's required for you to positively impose and influence on the opposition and your teammates.
And I think what you said was body language. It's an absolutely huge part of it, because obviously it's not all vocal, it's not everything. It's what do they see? What is the energy you're giving off? What is the body language? Are you setting into something like, boom, here I am, or are you just kind of like walking into something kind of like in a shell? And that body language and that energy is read by everybody, and especially the attacker. And so they're just like, oh, I got this, you know what I mean? Or is it like, boom, and all you see is somebody just like stepping up to you, just like, here I am, and like you said, like, yes, your team sees that as well. And that it should just glow off you in a sense. And the other thing is, when you put your boots on, when you step on that inside those lines, like whether it's, I don't want to say it's an act, or whether it's your character, or what, like character as in like acting character, like whatever it is that gets you there, find it. Because you have players that are like goofballs, and they're always joking around, and they're doing this and they're doing that and stuff like that. But who are you when you step on that field? It's not time to be that goofball. It's not, there is moments, but are you dialed in? Do you have that game face? What is your presence? What is your attitude? Because, you'll have the most serious person on the field that off the field is like just a clown. So that's their game persona, and that's their soccer persona, and that's their presence.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And what's interesting is the individuality around that. I mean, from my own experience, let's just take from the past season that's just finished here in England. I'm working with a number of players, but I can think of two centre backs. So two players in English men's football who are playing at the very highest level. One had a game face of cool, calm Van Dijk. And another one had a game face of positive energy Terry, as in John Terry. So you couldn't think of really two real cool, calm Van Dijk really contrasts positive energy Terry. John Terry, this classical British centre half, smash 'em, get stuck in. Cool, calm Van Dijk, reading the game, one step ahead.
Right.
Cool, calm, and you must have experienced this lots over as you said, you can get somebody who's kind of serious away from the game and then goofy in the game, and vice versa.
Right.
That's vital. And I think the last thing to come back at you and say here is a lot of what you're saying is backed by really strong science. So I'm going to put my psychologist cap on here massively and get very dull and boring for a second. And the geeks are going to like this. But, as you said, with your body language, creating that kind of presence, that's long been recognized and understood. I understand that. But in the mid-1990s, there's an Italian professor called Giacomo Ritolazzi who found these brain cells in our brain, funnily enough, called mirror neurons. So a neuron is a brain cell, and these are the brain cells that fire in accordance to what we're experiencing in our environment. They're the kind of neurons that help us, they're the brain cells that help us have empathy with a situation. They help us be scared in a situation where maybe we need to run away. And what you're doing there by creating body language that looks threatening to the opposition, that suppresses their movements. It suppresses how they feel. They fall into a threat mode rather than a challenge mode. So there's really good science. I mean, I've just skipped over a lot there and given you very basics of it, but there's really good science that backs up the importance of great body language. And I think it's imperative that people don't see that as a cliche. And it's important that young goalkeepers and older goalkeepers understand that they can really shift their emotional chemistry and the emotional chemistry of the opposition by how they hold themselves, by their vocals, by how they present themselves. That's a really important thing that shouldn't be pushed aside or brushed over.
Yeah, yeah.
So Dan, I've got a quick question right here in the comment sheet right here, and this comes from Hector Castro. And as we're discussing, body language and developing a presence, he has youth goalkeepers. I think they're around the ages of 8 years old, and he wants to know at what age should you start working on the sports psych aspect with children.
So what we pretty much strongly hypothesize in personality science is there's a shift from 5 to 8 years old, 5 to 9 years old. And it's a bit of an overt shift in terms of young people, children, at that age, start to grow in what we call a theory of mind. So we basically start to understand the world around us and that other people in our environment have goals, right? Have objectives. My friend, if I'm a 7-year-old, my friend over there wants to play with that toy over there, but I want to play with that toy over there. And it can start to lead to conflicts, and they start to learn in their own way, ways of negotiation, essentially. The reason why I'm answering it this way is because I think at that age, it's clearly not a good idea to sit a bunch of 8-year-olds down and say, this is going to be our classroom session for sports psychology. Nobody is saying that. And to be quite frank, I don't think necessarily anybody should do that until about the age of 14, 15. I'm not a great believer in that. This is where I think that incumbent on sports psychologists, incumbent on the industry as a whole, the education side of the industry, we need to help coaches be better at delivering this side of the game. And I think at 8 years old, you can have a soft, fun introduction to sports psychology, which, if I may say, techniques like a game face can be fun to do, because an 8-year-old who plays in goal a bit of the time, enjoys that's probably they're paying attention to who's in goal globally, you'd like to think, and if not, no problem, but they also know what positive looks like. If you said, I want you to catch this in a positive way, they'll probably do it. They also know what a confident looks like, or being sharp or on their toes looks like. So you can explore some words and some ideas. Kids like to play with animals, so I'm going to be positive lion. I'm going to catch the ball like a energetic cheetah. Something like, again, I work with players who are probably worth £50 million on the transfer market, let alone 8-year-olds, but 8-year-olds love this as well, right? But it's
I want to know I love just the whole idea of a cheetah thing. Like, I've got that in my head. I'm like, I want to be a cheetah. That sounds awesome.
They used to call me El Gato, and that the cat. So that in my head made me think I'm quick. Like, my reactions are quick. Like, whether that was in the thought that whoever nicknamed me that was thinking, well, if we tell her this, but that's stuck with me. Most people don't know that, but that's stuck with me my entire career. And so,
that's awesome. And if, as you say, you might not take that out onto the pitch, but if you said quick and you said
El Gato.
El Gato.
El Gato. Sorry, yes, of course, El Gato. Sorry.
It's the only thing in Spanish I know.
You're right. Of course, El Gato. Sorry. So, quick gato or quick cat or something like that. it sounds bizarre, but our brains have a great way of working with metaphors. In fact,
Yeah.
again, if I go back to some of the world's leading, we call them cognitive linguists, horrible term, but they will demonstrate that actually every single sentence we use some sort of metaphor. I'm over the moon, I'm in cloud nine, I'm down in the dirt. We use metaphors, and those metaphors tend to be physically embodied. So quick gatto, quick cat, quick cat.
Oh, it's the cat, but yeah.
Yeah.
Right, Mike?
It's the cat. Yeah.
The cat. Oh,
Yeah.
but you said quick, so you
Right,
can,
well, because it's cats.
Gato
quick,
rapido, gato rapido.
There
Look
we
at
go.
my mom's going to be so proud of me.
Now you have Inside the 18 in Spanish.
En español.
There we go.
real advanced Spanish here going on. Gato rapido. But gato rapido. But the point being is that you could use that as a narrative going into a game as well, a particularly pressurized game, a game where, and maybe where you've had a few, I don't know, sessions where you haven't been at your best, or you're feeling a bit flat and lethargic. And we talk about creating great pictures, gato rapido. You say those words, you create some good pictures, you increase your volume of good feelings, and that's important. But coming back to the question, I would just say you can have some fun with this, like we're doing now with 8-year-olds. I would talk with 8-year-olds about squashing ants. Squashing ants, ants being an acronym for automatic negative thoughts. A for automatic, N for negative, T for thoughts. You can have loads of fun. In this activity here, we're going to squash our ants. We're going to squash ants. I want you to raise your hand when you have an ant, okay? I want you to go and touch the post when you have an ant. Come back, and we'll make sure you get back to gato rapido, for instance. So
I know we're going to get blasted because we're saying it. So I'm just
Well,
waiting
you know what's really funny is actually I believe
waiting
that the
for the
Dominican
comments.
national team goalkeeper just came onto the. I'm not joking, onto the feed right now in the comment thread. So maybe it's from all the Spanish right now. He wanted to listen up to more that we got.
I love the
going on.
DR. I'm getting on track, but
Where were we? Oh,
Gato. We're done. I know we were on squashing ants.
we were squashing ants when we were being a cat.
Dan, I got a quick question for you right here. One of the things. Oh, okay. Hector Castro says he can help with the Hispanic podcast. What about negative presence? Because this is something that I think isn't spoken about enough. But like, I'll be straight up honest. Like, I'll give an example. Like, I just in the modern game right now, kepa. Like, you say the name kepa right now, and people are cringing right now. Kind of like a couple weeks ago, if you said degea, people were cringing. I'm
trying to be better. I'm trying to.
I know you're trying to stay all goalkeeper union there. But I honestly feel like the second kepa right now has a negative presence around him. Like everything, the second he gets on the field, you can almost kind of feel this energy of like people don't want him there, or and maybe it's not there. Maybe I'm just perceiving it based on all the extraneous factors that I'm hearing. But is that something internally, like negative presence, or is that something that's just in people's points of view?
Well, but is it? I'm going to add to that. Is it an outside thing? Is this fans, and is this like the press? Is that really how he feels and how his team feels? So like what, obviously I'm sure this gets inside of him because I'm sure he feels it and hears it and stuff, but it's two different things, correct? Like, yeah.
Yeah, look, I think, first thing, and as I always say as a psychologist, from an ethical perspective, I don't want to talk about a specific individual because that's not fair, and it's kind of rule 101 with. But I'll answer your question in as much as, if a goalkeeper's having a tough time, I don't know what's going on. You're talking about a specific keeper at a specific club, and I don't know what's happening at that club and what support he's getting, what support he's giving himself, and all that jazz. So I think that's the first thing I'd want to say. However, your points are well made, and and it's challenging now, especially now in the age of social media, where it's so compelling for players to go online and to have a look at what people are saying about them, and it's challenging to get away from that, to turn that off and to focus on you. And if I'm involved with a coaching staff, I would, and let's just say I'm involved with a set of goalkeeping coaching staff, we want to create a stronger coaching practice with as optimal coaching process, with a system around the player that helps them focus on themselves, focus on their game, focus on their strengths, be strength-based, and focus on the little things that they've got to do to keep chipping away to improve their game. I would want that system around the player for them to have a mental skills framework, so that if and when, and I think it probably is when, they do make a mistake, and that might be as a goalkeeper a small subtle mistake that many people don't see, because I think in goalkeeping terms, people think a lot about the obvious mistakes, but often, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, but often I'm having a conversation with a goalkeeper around the little things that they felt that went wrong but wasn't obvious.
Oh, I'm the queen of picking those out.
Right, and absolutely. Now that can be an advantage and a strength to you, because it demonstrates that you want to improve, and you've got to.
No, on other people.
Okay, fair enough. You need to be able to rationalize and go, hey, forget that. That's done. Let's move on, right? So I think it's a coaching practice within an organization, whether that's a college, whether that's a club, whether it's an international team, need to create, in my opinion, a coaching practice that creates a system around the player. And that system around the player can include, depending on the size of the organization, the size of the team, multiple individuals that help. So if we're talking about a Premier League club, which I know we are, you'd like to think the S&C coach, the sports scientists, the manager, the coaching staff, the goalkeeping coaching staff are around that player, and they're reinforcing the same good quality coaching processes, messages that are going to help that player. There needs to be a shared mental model, a cohesive process around that player. That's where, in my opinion, you help a player when they've had a terrible game, a slight slump in form. That's where you help them chip away and climb back up. But when we start to use catastrophizing language around the organization, around that coaching practice, that's where they can really take a dive. And that's a problem in an organization. You need leadership that manages the emotional temperature, the tone, the feel. And Saskia will appreciate, I'm sure, what I'm about to say. Tone is a big deal. You walk into a team, you walk into a club, you walk into an organization, and often you can feel that tone. You can feel the emotion, and you can feel it whether it's great or whether it's not so great. And it's really incumbent on the leaders, the coaches, to drive a really positive and coach-oriented tone, in my opinion.
I love what you're just saying right there, because, you know, I think that one of the things that happens a lot of times for us on the outside when we're watching something is we start perceiving things from how our emotions get the best of us as fans, I think, a lot of the times. And so I don't want to say that we start dehumanizing, but we stop taking out that human element of it whatsoever. And, you know, if you let that, like you're saying, fester into an actual organization where it's actually felt in the organization, that's when things can really, really start falling apart. And you brought up a lot of things in regards to leadership and coaching. So I kind of want to move in that direction right now, Dan, because there are certain managers out there, there are certain coaches out there that have the presence, and it's just something about them. And I don't know if there's a difference between charisma and presence, but like, you want to play for them. Mm-hmm. They get the best out of players. You know, players don't want to leave that club, even if they get a better deal somewhere else, just because of everything that they're getting from that person. Is this something that can be taught? can coaches learn to have this type of presence and to have a better effect on their players?
Well, what I'd like to do is, before I answer that, I mean, Saskia would know far better than me because she's been in amongst the mix as a player. I mean, Saskia, when, the coaches that and you don't obviously have to name names.
No, it's okay.
Presence, charisma, is that important for a leader, a coach? Did you feel it as a player? Was there negativity, positivity? What's good leadership for you in that respect?
I mean, there were, obviously coaches that I absolutely wanted to play for and wanted to make sure that I was on point. I brought my all. Like, I didn't want to disappoint. And they gave me so much respect that I didn't want to disrespect them. Whether that, we all have a bad game and stuff. So I don't.
The dogs just started barking.
Hold on.
That's okay. That's okay.
I have to mute myself so I can.
This is why you got to.
So I will say Tony DeChico right away. I will say absolutely. Gave so much respect that I wanted to give respect back, and I never wanted to show up out of shape. Always wanted to be on point. Wanted to do my best for him as well as my team. My first introduction to being around a coach like that would probably be Anson Dorrance. When I was, I was still in high school when I first went to my first camp for him when he was national team coach. And that was my first time around somebody that was that kind of, I don't really know if somebody else could probably describe Anson better, but that was the first coach that I was just like, oh my God, I'm not focus, take it all in. There's no way I'm showing up to camp not fit. There's no way I'm not bringing my all. There's no way I'm not doing anything when I'm not with the team to be the best I can be, and brought that out of me. And my players as well. And I always go back to the players because that was what's so special about that era of player that I grew up playing with. I felt that way about the players that he surrounded all of us with as well. I don't want to I hope, people aren't going to my college coaches stuff, but these are the coaches that really stick out to me in my mind. Now, are there a few coaches that I couldn't absolutely stand and get off the pitch with and not want to play for? Absolutely. And I will hold back that one name, but absolutely. Still to this day, it still pisses me off. No, they're two. Sorry. Still to this day, they both piss me off. I hate talking about them. And I kind of, to the point that I retired too. I say this, and I don't say this very often. I retired too early because of one of them. Because I just got such a bad taste at that point for soccer in my mouth. Couldn't stand the person. And for off the field things as well. And that's as an adult. And the other one, can't stand. I didn't want to play for them. I didn't care, at all. And that's not who I am. You guys know me. That's not who I am.
No. But I mean, you can right now just even recognize just the visceral reaction that's going on in Saskia right now. Showcases that negative presence had such an effect on her.
Absolutely, still does.
To this day, you can read the body language. As Dan's teaching me how to read body language, I can already read.
No, but it took such a profound effect on me, my life. Those two experiences with those two people that I can it bothers me to this day. I don't even want to be in the same room as those people. And they brought the worst out of me, I think, because I was such a teammate and put my team before myself and everything. And to bring that out of me, that's not who I was. So
it's interesting listening. Interesting is a horrible word, but please go with that. In listening to you, because it just demonstrates how important it is to emphasize that coaching is so much more than X's and O's. It's so much more. It requires so much more skill than authoritarian coaching. I'm not saying authoritative coaching because that's a different thing, but authoritarian maybe. And I don't know any of the details that you're saying about, but
no, but this is after I won a World Cup. So this isn't like, you know, this isn't when I was a kid. This is after I won a World Cup. I was an adult, you know, at the top of the world. So.
And it also, you know, coming back to your question, but also responding to you, Saskia, it makes me think about how do we define coaching? What is the definition of coaching? How do we go about our coaching practice and the processes within there? When you're talking about Tony DiCiccio, who I will forever be sad about not meeting, because I talked with Anthony a bit on Twitter, his son, and you know, I've known so many people have told me such great things about Tony DiCiccio and Anson Dorrance as well, who I never really had a proper conversation with, but see at the convention every year. But the words coming through to me are, I sound like a psychic there rather than a psychologist. The words coming through to me.
They're two very different people too. Two very different coaches.
Okay, interesting. And I'd be interested to hear about that. I'm thinking believable. You've got to be believable as a coach, and that sounds like quite narrow, but it really is wide. It's being believable as a coach is having a lot of knowledge. It is having a lot of domain specific knowledge. So it doesn't get rid of the X's and the O's. You know, if you've got a lot of knowledge, that's only a good thing, a powerful thing as a coach. But you've got to be able to know how to impart that knowledge, and you impart knowledge in very different ways to different people. You know, some people love to be told what to do, and other people need to be questioned, and the knowledge needs to be sort of extricated from them through questioning rather than just telling. But so knowledge is important. Good coaching is important, but caring is important.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing the individual in front of you and saying, you know, in essence, engaging in coaching behaviors that demonstrate that you care, which I guess is almost cliche to say in coaching now, because we've got so many texts and now that talk about the capacity to care, but we still need to be better and better and better at doing that in our coaching. And that can be challenging because good coaching is balancing stretch and support. I always say to coaches, you've got two dials. You've got a stretch dial and a support dial. And it's about knowing how to turn up the volume of stretch and turn up the volume of support. And it's about turning up the volume of stretch without being abusive. I mean, there's something recently came out, was it Texas Tech University, the basketball program there?
Yeah.
And how players have complained. Now, I don't know anything about that, but I'm just going on.
Like Bobby Knight, like people like that, right, who's famous for being abusive.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to make a judgment about anybody, but it's an art, it's a craft, coaching, and it's knowing how to stretch and it's knowing how to support. And I think that if anything, if we come back to the original topic, I think that's the presence. I think in many respects that's the charisma. The charisma and the presence is cultivated in the craft of coaching, in the craft of stretch and support. It's knowing what tasks to put on and how to manipulate the tasks in order to stretch players. It's knowing about your communication, tone, volume, content, style, without bullying or shouting at players all the time. And then it's knowing how to support, without getting away from the fact that we might be in a performance environment, so that to me is, I think that's maybe where what I'm thinking here, the presence is within that. And I think that what I'm also interested here is from a cultural perspective is in English football at the moment, we've got the emergence of Jurgen Klopp. We've got Pep Guardiola. These two, I suppose, what you could call charismatic leaders, charismatic in their delivery and their personality, and how I think whether it's on Twitter, whether it's in books, whether it's research, whatever it is, we talk a lot about the cultural piece these days. And culture is what we say and what we do. Culture is what we say and what we do. But you just wonder if it does require some presence and charisma these days to be able to change culture, to go into a deep change of culture, to do what Jurgen Klopp has done at Liverpool, possibly requires what he's got and what he's done. I'm just riffing here, but I'm
No,
just
no.
thinking.
I would say like after my horrible experiences, I'd say my final season of my career playing for New York and I played for Tom Sermanni, and it was just such a breath of fresh air to have somebody identify, and somebody I'd played against my entire career when he was a coach for Australia and stuff, and who got me and who sat me down one day and said, "What's going on with you?" and like what has happened, the past couple of years, and had a human conversation with me, and it was the best season I've ever played in my life, my final season, and I attribute that to him and like how he led me individually as well as what he brought to the team, but what he brought out of me, and it was just that identification and that I'm an individual, and like recognizing that and taking the time, and like coaches listening and watching, I'm sorry, you have to, it's not just X's and O's, it's not just here's the ball, go play and treat everybody the same. And especially as a goalkeeper, we're that whole thing, we're crazy, we're not crazy, it's an emotional position, and it's a crappy position. And I was like, if I had a kid, I wouldn't let them play goalkeeper. It's a tough place to be, and it takes a certain amount of understanding from a coach. And you don't have to understand goalkeeping per se as much as you have to understand who you have as individuals, in my opinion.
I want to bring this up because you're talking about Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola and everything like that, and we'd had somebody on a few weeks ago, and he was a huge fan of yours, Dan, and he was talking about utilizing the game facement concept in coaching as well too, and people like Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola and all those sorts of things. I have a question for you. I've seen a lot of times coaches try to artificially develop charisma or a presence, and I've seen it backfire because it doesn't work, because it does not seem like it's connected to who they really are. Can you give some coaches some advice there on how to find that inner Guardiola or that inner Klopp, for whatever, for better lack of a better term?
I think a coach face, a game face is a mix of authentic and inauthentic. Authenticity seems to be the buzz term at the moment, and I understand it. I have a slight problem with it to a degree, and I suppose my slight problem comes back to, what Saskia was talking about earlier, in terms of when you get your boots, your cleats on, then you've got to get into that game face. You've got to be the person that you've got to be. And so I think no matter what role you're doing in life, there is a time where you do have to act inauthentically, whether it's dealing with somebody else, somebody you find difficult, whether it's having an uncomfortable conversation. You might not be the same person around your mother or father as you are with your husband or wife. You might not be the same person with your husband and wife than you are with your friends, and so on and so forth. Or you might be. It just, again, very individual. Depends who you are and what your personality is and what your outlook on life is. I think I think that having a critical friend is really important, and ideally within the setup that you're in. And that critical friend might be your assistant coach. It might be the assistant goalkeeping coach. It might be somebody that is a mentor. Again, this term critical friend, who you have the opportunity to invite in and watch you from time to time. And you can ask them, you can tell them your coach face or game face and ask them some feedback. I think that you can, if I may say, you can ask the players that you're coaching what they enjoy about your coaching, what they'd like to see different, or what they feel that you can improve. Obviously, that's going towards the tech tax side as well, but also I think from, you could ask about your persona. That wouldn't be for everybody doing that, but you can do that. But I also think, I think your words are correct, Michael, but I also think it comes with a health warning. I think don't be scared. Don't be scared to sit down, think about who you want to be in training, think about who you tend to be as a person, and ask yourself, is that really a million miles away? Is this going to be so inauthentic that I come across as foolish or so inauthentic that I can't make an impact with these players? So I think there's that to consider. You can do a personality test. You can do, there's a really good test called the VIA, which is free, which is all to do with positive psychology. And you just go online, you Google VIA, and it's all about your character strengths. So one of the world's most prominent psychologists is a guy called Martin Seligman. And he started a movement called positive psychology in the late 80s, early 90s, because he felt that psychology since Freud has always been about clinical issues, problems, and he wanted to create a movement much more around thriving and flourishing. And he started it at where he's based, at Penn State University. And there's some great resources if you go to Penn State Positive Psychology and you go to the VIA. And the reason I'm saying this is because you can do this test free of charge. It gives you your character strengths, and then you can work towards those character strengths. So if one of your character strengths is honesty, you can work to being an honest coach, an honest person. So a game face could be more tailored towards your character strengths, essentially. Again, that comes with a health warning of recognize that your character strengths help you and hinder you. So if a character strength is honesty, there are clearly times where you can't always be 100% honest. If your character strength is persistence, the reality in life is sometimes you can't persist with a particular path, and you might have to veer off that path and look at doing something else, or looking at, if a player is trying to get a certain technique, but that's not working, you might go in a different direction with that player. So I think critical friend, don't be scared to have a game face, maybe do a character strength test, critical friend. And then the last thing today is just good old honest self-reflection. What do I think other people are experiencing? Is this so far removed from who I am? But don't be scared to be that. As long as it's not too inauthentic, then it can still be effective.
Yeah. Don't put on like a fake voice or anything like that when you go out there, like a weird character or something like that.
Well, that would just possibly be a bit weird, and then you might just get locked up for being a weirdo. But that's just a whole. I'm sports psychologist. You need the clinical psychology department.
Yeah.
But genuine thing here. I mean, in a gold standard personality test is called an NEO. Okay, and there's good 50 years of research around this test, and I test very introverted. I'm a real introvert, to the point where I test so far introverted that it's something I have to be mindful of, because social experiences can exhaust me. So I have to manage that.
Me too.
Right.
Meanwhile, both of you guys come across as extroverts.
I was being sarcastic.
Okay, sorry. Well, to be fair, things you said earlier. But the interesting thing about introversion and extroversion, you see, the extroversion is about enthusiasm and assertiveness. So what we know from recent research in the past decade is that if we take extroversion and we go one level down, extroverts are enthusiastic socially, and they're assertive. They assert themselves, okay? Some people are more enthusiastic, some people are more assertive. So there's that. Introversion is not the opposite of extroversion. Introversion is the absence of extroversion. So there you go. Yeah. So introversion is not the opposite, it's just the absence of extroversion. So I didn't have a point to tell you that. I just thought you might like to know. But personality science it's very interesting, personality science, and it's a real. I'm trying to weave it into my next book, because I think it's really important for coaches to. What we know is there's 5 traits in personality science. So you've got extroversion, you've got conscientiousness, you've got agreeableness, you've got neuroticism, and you've got openness. And the conscientiousness one is really important. Conscientious people are very orderly, and very industrious. And it's the orderliness one, which is really interesting in sport. Players who arrive late. Players who are all over the place, players who forget things, they forget stuff in their kit bag. They don't turn up for the video analysis on time, things like that. Sometimes they just can't help that. They've got a biological predisposition to a lack of orderliness, okay?
I know a couple of those.
Right, or they've grown up in a household where they haven't experienced orderliness, and so they're not very orderly. They don't mean to be. And so what you want to do as a coaching culture with that player is just help them diarize, help them create schedules. You've got to be a bit more on top of them. And if I may say, and we're the same in Britain, so I'm not pinpointing North America, but North American sporting culture tends towards externalizing effort, attitude, and energy, and saying to players, well, you can control your attitude and you can control your effort and energy, and you've got to go away and do that. I have a problem with that. I think incumbent on coaching is we have to create environments and coaching processes that help players manage attitudinal things and effort and energy. There's going to be players on the extreme who might not be right for our culture. No doubts about that. But if you've got somebody who is low orderly, it doesn't mean they can't be orderly. It just means that as a coaching unit, you've got to recognize that and create processes that help them become more orderly. That's what I would always argue as a psychologist. Anyway, we're going off on a complete tangent.
No, but it's so fascinating. It's so awesome. Like, I don't know about you, Saskia, but I'm like taking notes. I'm like, this is awesome. I got to take this. I got to take
just
this.
Memorizing it.
Mm-hmm.
I have this question though, because one thing that I've noticed is a lot of times is like a coach who might have a certain personality, which is complete opposite of another player's personality. That player will leave that club, go to another club where a coach is the same personality as them, and then absolutely flourish. Is this something where just if you're a real extrovert and you have an introvert, you're never really going to be able to connect with them, or is it still possible to work together?
How well do you connect with introverts, Saskia?
I don't know. So I think it depends. Like if it balances me, I connect with everybody. I know that. It's true. I connect with everybody. Like, I figure it out.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Look, but I think that's.
I mean, there's some people that think maybe I'm a bit much sometimes, but I don't not get along with very many people, and not be able to kind of curb things, I think is a good way to put it. Like, kind of read somebody, Yeah.
But what you're saying there is a real coaching skill, and I think that maybe, whether you feel you've got that naturally as a person or whether you've learnt it over the years as a player and a coach, those are skills that they need to be improved. And I think there's nothing more powerful than flexing as a coach. And again, if I may say, this is why I like the personality science stuff, because I think knowing yourself is important as a coach. If you know that you tend to be, Saskia, you talk about being a friendly person, that comes under the trait of agreeableness. And if you know you're quite a low agreeable coach, if you know you can be quite bitey, quite aggressive, and can be quite forthright and straightforward with your views, you don't suffer fools gladly, perhaps, as a coach from an extreme perspective. That's okay, as long as you know that's the case, so that you can regulate that and flex that depending on who you've got in front of you.
Right.
I think you'd have to be working at the real towards what we would call personality disorders in psychology. I think if you can't do that, I think a real skill for coaches to do is to be able to, who am I? What do I know about me? If I step into an environment in an organization, I know, okay, I can be a bit introverted. So there's nothing wrong with being introverted. It just means you can get a bit tired through social interaction. So you manage that,
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with being low agreeable. unless it becomes, I mean, there's big debate at the moment. We're all watching the Michael Jordan documentary, Last Dance, on Netflix, and there's big debate about his leadership style. Was that right? Was it wrong? Was he bullying? Was he not? Should it be like that? Should it not have been like that? What I could comfortably say is on the court, his low agreeableness, his aggressiveness, his instrumental aggressiveness, not reactive aggressiveness, but instrumental aggressiveness, helped him to be the player he was. And actually, a lot of my work is trying to help players become more instrumentally aggressive. So instrumental means to be deliberate about it, to do it on purpose. And you know, you'd appreciate this, Saskia. You'd be amazed. You work with some of the best players in the world, and they're not naturally, they might have a lot of skill in their feet, or as a goalkeeper, a lot of skill in their hands, but they're not naturally assertive or aggressive in the ways that you might want them to be.
Right.
And I find a lot of my work is trying to help players find that space, find that mental space when they put their boots or cleats on, they're out there and they're being more instrumentally aggressive or assertive. And so I don't know how I've gone down this path, and I'm completely but that's important. Michael, I'm lost. So there we go.
No, you are not lost. But I mean, look, I always tell people this. They say, we might have a topic, on the dial, but we're going to go all over the place because there's just so many fascinating directions that we can go. Dan, first off, I mean, I appreciate, you taking the time, on a Monday evening, for you to go almost an hour with us. We're actually over an hour now with us, discussing this topic. It's so funny because people always go, they're like, well, how long can you really talk about this stuff? I'm like, oh, hours. I mean,
especially, so
I'm sure
I can talk about it.
I'm going to have to Venmo you for half of it for my session. I got to go work out right now to get out my irritation from bringing out those two coaches.
Oh, yeah. No, I know. It was good. It was good.
I know you're going to ask me later who they were too. It's
a nice solid consultation that Saskia got right here with Dan. Before we go, Dan, and we'll start getting some plugs here because people are going to probably be like, oh, we need to get his services ASAP for our club and our players. Do you have any advice for young coaches beginning their journey? Because one thing that we get a lot of times with younger coaches, and we've discussed this on the show, and I was a culprit of it as well when I started my coaching journey, is that I would try to be, basically a shadow of people that I had coached me in the past, because that was my idea of coaching, was to be like those people. Is that necessarily right or wrong? And what's the best direction for a young coach to go to kind of learn kind of the ropes of developing their own individual presence?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question. It's interesting what you were saying there. Is, there's a great deal of debate, I suppose, at the moment. A faction of coaches who are quite controversial, who are talking about objective versus subjective evidence and the importance of objective evidence, and they're quite vocal on social media, especially. And in many respects, that's what you're talking about: the subjectiveness, the horrible term we use in science is experiential evidence. So your experiences from your playing days and your experiences of talking with other coaches and getting ideas from other coaches, and empirical evidence. So evidence from research. So opening up a coaching textbook and getting evidence from there. And I think it is. I think it is it's a balance and blend between the two if you'd like to go that way. I think that this faction of coaches talk about everything's got to be objective, and it's like, well, what is objective? I mean, I'm not so sure about that. But I think if you can as a coach sit down with a pen and a bit of paper, or a notebook and a bit of paper, and start writing about what you know about coaching. What's your framework? What do you want your framework to be? I think that's a good start. And what do you know? How were you coached? And I understand that how you coach doesn't necessarily apply to your context. Again, I think those objective guys would shout at me, but I think that's a good start. I think that seeking information and advice from lots of coaches, I think, is a good thing. I think having a good filtering system there as well. clearly listening to podcasts like this and the Sports Psych show are great, and clearly picking up Soccer Tough 2 and Soccer Brain would be a great idea. I think reading is important, and I think not dismissing anything that has scientific words in there. I think that's important as well, because I think there's this, I don't want to use these two words, but I'm going to, so please forgive me. On one side, there can be arrogance, and on the other side, there can be ignorance. And I think you want to try and hit the middle, whereby you're not going to be so arrogant that you're going to dismiss anything, and you're not going to be so ignorant that you're not going to dismiss anything. And I think there can be coaches out there who say, oh, scientific research, oh, forget that. It's just it's just from your experiences. And then you've got coaches who would be the other way around. Oh, it's all about the science and what we know from the objective evidence. It's just like, let's meet in the two. So that's the first thing I would say. Sit down, start to formulate your framework. How do you want to do this with relation to your experiences, the conversations you're having, and the books you're reading and the podcasts you're listening to, the science out there, essentially. I think the other thing to say is sit down with a bit of paper and a pen. If I talk about the psychosocial side of things here, I always say to people, the challenge of the psychological and the social side of the game, and where a lot of people get lost, is it tends to be so broad, so expansive. And I think if you can, and in many respects, I don't know if this is going to be my next book, but maybe the book after, it's just trying to make sense make around the psychosocial side. If you can start to do that, again, bit of paper, pen, how do you like to deliver psychosocial with your players? It might start with a game face. It might continue with squashing ants. It might be self-talk. It might be about stretch and support. Obviously, I'm talking about my stuff here, but you might think of another good idea you got from a coach and write that down around a psychosocial side. You might write, I care greatly about my players. Start to build up a library of thoughts that help you make sense of psychosocial. Because I think that's where coaches come unstuck, is they don't build up a library of a catalogue of ideas and thoughts that can be their own. I probably had something else in my mind there, but I can't remember. I think that's what I would say. And create a game face, create a coach face. Go out there, be that coach face. Enjoy. That's what I was going to say. Self-reflection. Self skills are really important. If anything, self skills might be the most important. It's really dull, it's really boring, but I think self skills, self-awareness, self-control, and self-reflection. Those three skills are really, really, you can almost say they're everything. Know yourself, reflect constantly, and think about what works, what doesn't work, strengths, areas to improve. Think about who you are, what you bring to the table, and how that helps and hinders you. And what that self-reflection and self-awareness, human beings have self-awareness to be able to self-control, arguably the world's leading psychologist on self-control is a guy called Roy Baumeister. And he says we have self-awareness to be able to self-control. So once you become more aware of yourself, you can engage self-control better. If you self-reflect more, then you can self-control better. So that's what I would say.
Man, that's that.
So that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's what I would say. And I was like, I think that might just be a book. That might be. It might have just been a book right there. Well, honestly, Dan, thanks so much for taking honestly all this time. Like I said, I mean, the fact that I don't think people recognize, how sought after you are, and the fact that you're willing to come on our little show all the time. I mean, it just means so much to us. I mean, this is such an important aspect of not just coaching, but also, the goalkeeping position that we just love the fact that you're willing to come on. I know that you've got a website where you can literally link to everything that you're doing. So what is that website for any coaches or players or organizations out there that want to connect with you and get in touch?
Well, look, firstly, I want to say thank you very much for inviting me on. I think that's what you've just said is absolutely ridiculous. I'm more than honoured and delighted to come on at any time. And to be on with Saskia, a World Cup winner and an awesome coach and an all-round great person is humbling as well. So to be able to riff with her is brilliant. And it's all right talking with you as well, Michael. I quite enjoyed that as well.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, look. I'm not a co-owner with Serena Williams and Natalie Portman in a professional football team, you know. But I got a few things going on. I just submitted a writing packet for a comedy show.
All right.
Well,
now he's gonna analyze you for saying
yeah. Was that a
we
bit
got
of
a whole
insecurity?
another hour to deal with Michael.
Yeah. Now we got to do with my insecurities right here.
Was that a bit of insecurity? And I'm just
There's
delighted.
a reason you're a comedian, Michael. There's something deep inside of that.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Look,
see,
I've done some work with comedians. We're going to a deeper, darker place.
Yeah.
There's something called the dark triad of personality, which is really low agreeableness. So we can talk about the dark triad of personality another time.
Oh man,
just a bit more privately.
Dan, have you been on Alexis and Christian's Cooligans podcast? Have you been on their podcast yet? Oh, you gotta reach out. I gotta connect you with them. Yeah.
We'll do
Michelle,
that. We'll do that.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
And obviously I'm honoured as well, or more delighted than honoured that we've gone into a second hour, which is a second $5,000 because I rounded up. So we're 10 grand there. And so thank you so much. But look, thank you. And my website is danabrahams.com. And my academy, you can find my academy there that helps players, coaches and parents work on the mental side of the game, joined up solution. So I think that's really important, an integrated solution between players, coaches and parents. So over 100 videos in there, animated videos, really try to bring it alive. And then there's the books on there as well. My podcast is the Sports Psych Show. You can follow me on Dan Abraham 77 on Twitter, Dan Abraham Soccer on Facebook, where I'm posting a little article most days, and Dan Abraham Sport on Instagram.
Wow.
And Saskia, I'm busy. So thank you so much. Awesome. Enjoyed it as always.
Absolutely.
And remember, guys, you can obviously follow. By the way, this is all going to be in the show notes, guys. If you did not catch that in the audio or in the video right here, we'll have it in the show notes so you guys can connect with Dan. As always, you can connect with Saskia Weber at Saskia_Weber on all social media platforms now, including Twitter. And you can reach out to us if you have a guest suggestion or a topic suggestion. Shout out to all the Dan Abrahams fans out there who've been reaching out, asking us to get Dan back on the show here. Contact at Inside the 18. That's the number 18media.com, at Goalkeeper Podcast on all social media platforms. I guess I'll plug myself since the comedy world will eventually come back, at Michael Magid on all social media platforms. That's all the time on Inside the 18, and we are out. Later, guys.